And then there were four. The college football season has been whittled down to these: Indiana, Oregon, with Indiana the favorite. Those two will go head-to-head Friday. It's a rematch of a regular season meeting. Indiana won that one. Miami and Ole Miss will play on Thursday night. You see Miami's odds a little shorter than the Rebels. The Big Ten, will remind you, has won the last two national championships. They have two of the remaining four teams are guaranteed to get one of them into the final game. Now, Alabama's lost yesterday. I promised we'd go deep, and let's do it. One of the things that happened, quarterback Ty Simpson, as we mentioned in the highlight, suffering a cracked rib in the first half of the game, suffered a 3-and-out to start the second half, realized he just couldn't do it, handed the reins over to his backup, Austin Mack. The reality is the game was long since decided by that point. In fact, yesterday's 35-point loss, officially the largest postseason loss in the history of the Alabama football program. So the questions now will be about Coach Kalen DeBoer, who we thought might be leaving for Michigan and now is staying. And as Paul started to say a moment ago, and we will let him continue to say now, where is all of the goodwill that has been built up here in all of this? Paul, how would you describe the level of frustration / devastation / angst of the Alabama fan base in general, and perhaps in particular with regards to its coach?
I would say it's DEFCON 1, Greeny, and I know a lot of people are saying, how can you say that? Because you were here a week and a half ago talking about what a big win it was against Oklahoma. That seemed like 100 years ago after what happened. And when you show that figure, that it's the worst postseason loss in Alabama history, it's one of the worst losses ever, Alabama fans cannot wrap their arms around that. They are so used to being the hunted. They are so used to having people like Josh and myself say, I'm not really sure how they're going to win, but they're going to win, because that's been the mystique of Alabama. Yesterday shattered that mystique, Greeny. It's gone. Everything that Bear Bryant put up there and others, especially Nick Saban's 6 national championships, went down the drain, not only because it was in the Rose Bowl, it was against Indiana, a team that I couldn't find an Alabama fan that really respected Indiana. And that's what makes this so difficult for Kalen DeBoer. Yes, he's an elite coach. He's on the top rung, but he's not good enough to beat Curt Cignetti. And I even had people texting me late last night, why didn't we, meaning Alabama, hire Curt Cignetti? That's how things have gotten right now. He was not even on the board, as you remember, Greeny, but things are rather bleak right now for Kalen DeBoer. No, he's not going to get fired, nor should he probably be fired. But I don't know a lot of Alabama fans who think he'll ever win a championship, and that's how Alabama fans measure their coach and their program.
Josh, I see the wry smile on your lips. What are the right things to say about the state of Alabama football this morning?
I would just love to take Paul's point there and let's have a fun little science project, hit the rewind button 2 years, breaking news on his show. Alabama has hired Mike Norvell? No. Kalen DeBoer? No. We're going to hire Curt Cignetti from James Madison. How do you guys love that? And just open the phone lines.
Exactly.
Just open the phone lines for a week. Look, for our entire lifetimes, actually, because for multiple generations, that uniform has meant something, that logo has meant something. Okay, and then in the Nick Saban era, it came to mean a whole new thing. It's still a really, really fancy car. The difference is once the driver gets out and you get in, you don't get to benefit from how he drove it. It's yours. It's your program. And that's not even to mention all the changes on the overall landscape of college football. So Kalen DeBoer is going to have to define what Alabama is under him. And I think yesterday was such an off-the-grid performance. By that, I mean, if you wrote down 100 possible outcomes on a piece of paper, the dot that ended up being yesterday's outcome is off the paper entirely. It makes you question everything. He said in his postgame, you got to question everything. And I agree with him. And it's very easy to say, oh, Kalen DeBoer, yes or no. You got to dive deeper on this. Alabama for 2 years. The University of Alabama has not been able to run the football. Ryan Grubb was fired in Seattle because he couldn't do it. He has now not done it at Alabama. And the biggest question for me about Kalen DeBoer is not Kalen DeBoer himself. The biggest question is going to be, it's obvious there's some tough decisions that have to be made around there if they're going to fulfill their potential offensively, therefore fulfill their potential as a team. Is he ready to do that? Does he see that as necessary?
Well, one of the many questions that has to get answered is who their quarterback is going to be. And Jordan, you and I were talking yesterday about what a big game this was, or what a big playoff this was for Bama's quarterback Ty Simpson, who might play his way into or out of the first round, depending on how things went. I don't know how yesterday could have gone much worse. Obviously, he gets hurt in the game. What are your thoughts on that this morning?
Yeah, I think he had the most to gain and the most to lose, and he lost a lot yesterday, right? He's not playing himself into the conversation for QB1, QB2, or the first round, especially with the way not just yesterday went, but the last month or so went. And I will say, not all of it is his fault. To Josh's point, they can't run the football. You can't beat good defenses when you are completely unbalanced like that, and you depend solely on drop-back passing. So he didn't have any help, but he should definitely come back to school. He is a really good player. His film is still fantastic at times, but there is a lot that needs to improve around him. He still needs to improve a lot. And just to wrap up the Alabama as a whole conversation, I think the most glaring issue is Bama fans and us that cover the SEC aren't used to seeing Bama out-coached this many times in the span of a couple years. And take yesterday for an example, and Indiana's done it to a lot of people, but Indiana has 8 players on that roster that were 4 or 5 stars. Alabama has 57. The talent composite of this roster should not have a performance like we saw yesterday, especially with them quitting at the end. So that's the most glaring thing. Ty should come back to school, but man, we haven't seen a Bama team get out-coached this consistently at times over the last couple of years. That's a big problem.
EJ.
Here's the thing. So as a former player of a team that hasn't sniffed the playoff, and I'm talking about Florida State, Alabama fans still need to be at least appreciative of what this Alabama team and Kalen DeBoer have done this season. You got into the playoff. You won a game against Oklahoma at Oklahoma. Now you got boat race here against Indiana, but Indiana is the #1 damn team in the country, so you can't overreact. But like Jordan said, they can't run the football. All this anger, all this angst needs to go in the direction of trying to figure out how to get some kind of run game, which I then also think, Jordan, would help Ty Simpson a lot. And look, I think if Ty does come out this year, he could work himself into being QB2, QB3 maybe, because we know how you can have a run in the Senior Bowl, go to the Combine and still impress, because it is about a body of work. I don't think it's just about a performance here against Indiana. But for Alabama fans, I get it. But ultimately, there's one of one when you talk about Nick Saban. There's some other greats like Kirby Smart, Dabo, but overall, you can't just have the expectation every single year to dominate everybody. Other teams got money and other teams are getting better too.
Yes, I've said it many times. That was the worst job in America. You don't want to be the guy who follows the guy, and you especially don't want to be the guy who follows the guy at the exact moment that they've changed the rules so that no one will ever be the guy again. That's the situation Kalen DeBoer is in, no matter how badly yesterday went. Paul, I want to show you one other thing. This is C11, if we can, please, Cindy. With that loss, this continues what has to be, for the folks down in Paul's area, an alarming trend. Since last season, the Big Ten is 8-2 in bowl games against the SEC. In the last 3 seasons, the Big Ten is 4-0 in playoff games, winning by an average of 20 points per game. They have 2 of the 4 teams left. They're guaranteed of having one of the teams in the national championship, and if that team wins it, they will have 3 consecutive national champions from 3 different programs. Paul, what are the right things to say about that this morning?
It's getting very lonely up on this hill, Greeny, defending the SEC. Unless Ole Miss pulls this off, it is going to be a nuclear winter for SEC fans, because I've been saying it for a couple of years that you can't look, you have to look at the SEC in whole and total, and I know we all talk about that, but you can't argue with the stats. You can debate some of these bowl games. You cannot debate the playoffs. This is what it's all about, and the SEC continues to lose to Big Ten teams. And unless Ole Miss can pull it out Thursday night in Arizona and somehow pull down a crown in Miami, there's nothing left for us to say down here about how great our league is. It may be deeper, but it's not playing for national championships like the way it used to, and that's a big story down here.
Pate.
I would look at the Big Ten now. We're getting a bigger and bigger sample size here, and I'd admire more so than anything the way they staff. And I think it's the biggest lesson that the SEC can take away. The SEC does not lack for talent. Top to bottom, that's still the deepest conference in America. Probably always will be, even with the new era. But I'm telling you this, just because your representation has gotten you an SEC head coaching gig does not mean you infinitely owe it to that outfit to then fill your building with their clients. You got to go hire the best guys for the job. Wide receiver coach, coordinator, strength and conditioning, I don't care who it is. And the way the SEC staffs is a little bit antiquated and a lot ignorant, and that's the lesson I take away from how the Big Ten does things.
Okay, we will have a lot more to say about all of this with this crew as we continue all morning long on this Football Friday. And look who's with us today, Joe Fortenbaugh, who's with us every Friday, our betting expert, as we take a look at some of the more interesting things that come out of the CFP, and then we'll do an NFL one as well. Let's do the games coming up. Oregon and Indiana, what does the smart money say?
Looking to Oregon plus the 4 here. You and I have talked about this countless times. We're not betting helmets, we're not betting jerseys, we're betting numbers. This number feels a touch high. Why do we say that? Go back to October when these two met in Eugene. Indiana won that game. Oregon was laying 7.5. So now a few months later on a neutral site, we're swinging the point spread 11.5 points. We have new data points. We absolutely should be adjusting it. I feel like that's too many. Keep this in mind, Greeny, with Indiana. Going into yesterday's matchup against Alabama, they were probably the most undervalued team in the country. Now that they've proven it to everybody, they might be a tad bit overvalued from that standalone game. We'll take the points with Oregon.
I tell you, I mean, I hear you in every conceivable way, but watching Indiana play yesterday, that's going to be one you're going to be scared to death to pull the trigger on. And then we got Ole Miss and Miami. What's the smart money say there?
I'd look to the dog here as well, getting the field goal with Ole Miss. Market split. Some places are at 2.5, some are at 3. So let's take the field goal. You know how valuable that is. You got a situation here where if you throw these two quarterbacks against each other, I'm going to want Chambliss over Beck, because Beck's been a great story with Miami, but it's been about the defense. They've been largely an underdog. Now we're asking them to cover margin, winning by 3 points. If they're in a trailing game state and you need to lean on Carson Beck, I find that troublesome. Give me Ole Miss here.
Okay, and then let's do one from the National Football League. We have a prop involving Caleb Williams in Chicago.